Agatha Christie was an English detective novelist and playwright. She wrote about 75 novels and 66 detectives and 14 short stories. She is also a famous mystery writer. Her other famous books are Murder on the Orient Express and The ABC Murders. Her novels have sold more than 100 million copies and that are translated into some 100 languages. Many works have been adapted for television and films. The Murder on the Links, novel written by Agatha Christie. Part 3. Chapter 20. An amazing statement. The next moment, Poirot embraced me warmly on the cheek. "Enfin, you have arrived, and all by yourself. It is superb. Continue your reasoning. You are right. Decidedly, we have done wrong to forget George-bernad-shaw." I was so flattered by the little man's approval that I could hardly continue. But at last I collected my thoughts and went on. George-bernad-shaw disappeared 20 years ago, but we have no reason to believe that he is dead. "Oakenment," agreed Poirot. "Proceed. Therefore, we will assume that he is alive exactly, or what he was alive until recently. D. Max and Max. We will presume," I continued, my enthusiasm rising, "that he has fallen on evil days. He has become a criminal, an epic, a tramp, a what you will. He chances to come to Merlinville. There he finds the woman he has never ceased to love." The sentimentality, burned Poirot. "Where one hates one also loves," I quoted on, misquoted. "At any rate, he finds her there, living under an assumed name. But she has a new lover, the Englishman, Ronald. George-bernad-shaw, the memory of old wrong rising in him, quarrels with this Ronald. He lies in wait for him as he comes to visit his mistress and stabs him on the back. Then, terrified at what he has done, he starts to dig a grave. I imagine it likely that Madame Dubreuil comes out to look for her lover. She and Cono have a terrible scene. He drags her into the shed and there suddenly falls down in an epileptic fit. Now supposing Jack Reynolds to appear, Madame Dubreuil tells him all, points out to him the dreadful consequences to her daughter if this scandal of past is revived. His father's murderer is dead. Let them do their best to hush it up. Jack Reynolds consents, goes to the house and has an interview with his mother, winning her over to his point of view. Primed with the story that Madame Dubreuil has suggested to him, she permits herself to be gagged and bound. There, Poirot, what do you think of that? I leaned back, flushed with the pride of successful reconstruction. Poirot looked at me thoughtfully. "I think that he should write for the Cinema, mon ami," he remarked at last. "You mean?" "It would mean a good film, the story that you have recounted to me there, but it bears no sort of resemblances to everyday life. I admit that. I haven't gone into all the details, but you have gone further. You have ignored them magnificently. What about the way the two men were dressed? Do you suggest that after stabbing his victim, Pono removed his suit of clothes, donned it himself, and replaced the dagger? I don't see that matters," I objected rather huffily. "He may have obtained clothes and money from Madame Dubreuil by treats earlier in the day." "By treats? You seriously advance that supposition?" "Certainly. He could have threatened to reveal her identity to Reynolds, which would probably have put an end to all hopes of her daughter's marriage. You are wrong, Hastings. He could not blackmail her, for she had the whip hand. George-Bernad-Shaw, remember, is still wanted for murder. A word from her, and he is in danger of the guillotine. I was forced, rather reluctantly, to admit the truth of this. Your theory, I remarked acidly, is doubtless correct as to all the details. My theory is the truth, said Poirot quietly, and the truth is necessarily correct. In your theory, you made a fundamental error. You permitted your imagination to lead you astray with midnight, assassination and passionate love scenes. But in investigating crime, we must take our stand upon the commonplace. Shall I demonstrate my method to you? Oh, by all means, let us have a demonstration. Poirot sat very upright and began, wagging his forefinger emphatically to emphasize his points. I will start, as you start, from the basic fact of George-Bernad-Shaw. Now the story told by Madame Baroldi in court as to the Russians was admittedly a fabrication. If she was innocent of connivance in the crime, it was concocted by her, and by her only, as she stated. If, on the other hand, she was not innocent, it might have been invented by either her or George-Bernad-Shaw. Now, in this case, we were investigating. We meet the same tale, as I pointed out to you. The fact, remember, it very unlikely that Madame Dubreuil inspired it. So, we turn to the hypothesis that the story had its origin in the brain of George-Bernad-Shaw. Very good. George-Bernad-Shaw, therefore, planned the crime with Mrs. Reynolds as his accomplice. She is in the limelight, and behind her is a shadowy figure whose present alias is unknown to us. Now, let us go carefully over the Reynolds case from the beginning, setting down each significant point in its chronological order. You have a notebook and pencil? Good. Now, what is the earliest point to note down? The letter to you. That was the first we know of it, but it is not the proper beginning of the case. The first point of any significance, I should say, is the change that came over Monsieur Reynolds shortly after arriving in Merlinville, and which is attested to by several witnesses. We have also to consider his friendship with Madame Dubreuil and the large sum of money paid over to her. From thence, we can come directly to 23rd May. Poirot paused, cleared his throat, and sighed to me to write. 23rd May. Mr. Reynolds quarrels with his son over letters. Wished to marry Marthe Dubreuil. Son leaves to Paris. 24th May. Mr. Reynolds altered his will, leaving entire control of his fortune in his wife's hand. 7th June. Quarrel with tramp in garden, witnessed by Marthe Dubreuil. Letter written to Mr. Hercule Poirot, imploring assistance. Telegram sent to Mr. Jack Reynolds, bidding him proceed by the Ansora to Buenos Aires. Chauffeur, master sent off on a holiday. Visit of a lady that evening, as he is seeing her out. His words are, yes, yes, but for God's sake, go now. Poirot paused there. Hastings, take each of those facts one by one. Consider them carefully by themselves and in relation to the whole, and see if you do not get new light on the matter. I endeavored conscientiously to do as he had said. After a moment or two, I said rather doubtfully, as to the first point, the question seems to be whether we adopt the theory of blackmail or of an infatuation for this woman. Blackmail. Decidedly. You heard what Stoner said as to his character and habits. Mrs. Reynolds did not confirm his views. I argued. We have already seen that Madame Reynolds' testimony cannot be relied upon in any way. We must trust to Stoner on that point. Still, if Reynolds had an affair with a woman called Bella, there seems no inherent improbability in his having another with Madame de Breuil. None whatsoever, I grant you, Hastings. But did he? The letter. Poirot, you forget the letter. No, I do not forget. But what makes you think that letters was written to Monsieur Reynolds? Why, it was found in his pocket, and what is all? Captain Poirot. There was no mention of any name to show to whom the letter was addressed. We assumed it was to the dead man because it was in the pocket of his overcoat. Now, mon ami, something about that overcoat struck me as unusual. I measured it and made the remark that he wore his overcoat very long. That remark should have given you to the thinking. I thought you were just saying it for the sake of saying something, I confessed. Ah, Kelly, I.D. Later you observed me measuring the overcoat of Monsieur Jack Reynolds, a beard. Monsieur Jack Reynolds wears his overcoat very short. Put those two facts together with a third, namely that Monsieur Jack Reynolds flung out of the house in a hurry on his departure for Paris, and tell me what you make of it. I see, I said slowly, as the meaning of Poirot's remarks bore in upon me. That letter was written to Jack Reynolds, not to his father. He caught up the wrong overcoat in his hasty and agitation. Poirot nodded. Precisely. We can return to this point later. For the moment, let us content ourselves with accepting the letter as having nothing to do with Monsieur Reynolds Perry, and pass to the next chronological event. 23rd May. I read. Mr. Reynolds quarrels with his son over letters. Wish to marry Marthe de Breuil. Son leaves for Paris. I don't see anything much to remark upon there, and the altering of the will the following day seems straightforward enough. It was the direct result of the quarrel. We agree, mon ami, at least as to the cause. But what exact motive underlay this procedure of Monsieur Reynolds? I opened my eyes in surprise. Anger against his son, of course. Yet he wrote him affectionate letter to Paris. So Jack Reynolds says, but he cannot produce them. Well, let us pass from that. Now we come to the day of the tragedy. You have placed the event of the morning in a certain order. Have you any justification for that? I have ascertained that the letter to me was posted at the same time as the telegram was dispatched. Masters was informed he could take a holiday shortly afterwards. In my opinion, the quarrel with the tramp took place anterior to these happenings. I do not see that you can fix that definitely unless you question Madame de Breuil again. There is no need, I am sure of it, and if you do not see that, you see nothing. Hastings. I looked at him for a moment. Of course, I am an idiot. If the tramp was George-Bernad-Shaw, it was after the stormy interview with him that Mr. Reynolds apprehended danger. He sent away the chauffeur, Masters, whom he suspected of being in the other's pay. he wired to his son and sent for you. A faint smile crossed Poirot's lips. You do not think it is strange that he should use exactly the same expression in his letter as Madame Renaud used. Later in her story, if the mention of Santiago was a blind, why should Renaud speak of it, and what is more, send his son there? It is puzzling, I admit, but perhaps we shall find some explanation later. We come now to the evening and the visit of the mysterious lady. I confess that fairly baffles me, unless it was indeed Madame de Briolle, as Francois all along mentioned. Poirot shook his head. My friend, where are your wits wandering? Remember the fragment of check and the fact that the name Bella Duvian was faintly familiar to Stoner, and I think we may take it for granted that Bella Duvian is the full name of Jack's unknown correspondent, and that it was she who came to Villa Geneve that night. Whether she intended to see Jack or whether she meant all along to appeal to his father, we cannot be certain, but I think we may assume that this is what occurred. She produced her claim upon Jack, probably showed letters that he had written her, and the older man tries to buy her off by writing a check. This she indignantly tore up. The terms of her letter are those of a woman genuinely in love, and she would probably deeply resent being offered money. In the end, he got rid of her, and here the words that he used are significant. Yes, but for God's sake, go now, I repeated. They seem to me a little vehement. Perhaps that is all. That is enough. He was desperately anxious for the girl to go. Why? Not because the interview was unpleasant. No, it was the time that was slipping by, and for some reason time was precious. Why should it be? I asked, bewildered. That is what we ask themselves. Why should it be? But later we have the incident of the wristwatch, which again shows us that time plays a very important part in the crime. We are now fast approaching the actual drama. It is 10:30 then Bella Duvian leaves, and by the evidence of the wristwatch we know that the crime was committed, or at any rate that it was staged, before 12 o'clock. We have reviewed all the events anterior to the murder. There remains only one unplaced. By the doctor's evidence, the tramp, when found, had been dead at least 48 hours, with a possible margin of 24 hours more. Now, with no other fact to help me than those we have discussed, I place the death as having occurred on the morning of 7th June. I stared at him, stupefied. But how? Why? How can you possibly know? Because only in that way can the sequence of events be logically explained. Mon ami, I have taken you step by step along the way. Do you not now see what is so glaringly plain? My dear pirate, I can't see anything glaring about it. I did think I was beginning to see May way before, but I am now hopelessly fogged. For goodness, get on and tell me who killed Mr. Renaud. That is just what I am not sure of yet. But you said it was glaringly clear. We talk at cross purpose. My friend, remember, it is 2 crimes we are investigating, for which, as I pointed out to you, We have the necessary two bodies. There were naive impatience. I explain all. To begin with, we apply our psychology. We find 3 points at which Monsieur Renaud displays a distinct change of view and action. 3 psychological points, therefore. The first occurs immediately after arriving in Merlinville. The second after quarreling with his son on a certain subject. The third on the morning of 7th June. Now, for the 3 causes, we can attribute no I to meaning. Madame de Briolle. Number 2 is indirectly connected with her, since it concerned a marriage between Monsieur Renaud's son and her daughter. But the cause of 3 is hidden from us. We had to deduce it. Now, mon ami, let me ask you a question. Whom do we believe to have planned this crime? Georges-Bernad, I said doubtfully, eyeing Poirot warily. Exactly. Now, Gerard laid it down as an axiom that a woman lies to save herself, the man she loves, and her child, since we are satisfied that it was Georges-Bernad who dictated to lie to her, and as Georges-Bernad is not Jack Renaud, it follows that the third case is put out of court, and still attributing the crime to George-Bernad. The first is equally so. So, we are forced to the second, that Madame Renaud lied for the sake of the man she loved, or in other words, for the sake of George-Bernad. You agree to that? Yes, I admitted. It seems logical enough. Bien, Madame Renaud loves George-Bernad. Who then is Georges-Bernad? The tramp. Have we any evidence to show that Madame Renaud loved the tramp? No, but very well. Then, do not cling to theories where fact no longer support them. Ask yourself instead whom Madame Renaud did love. I shook my head, perplexed. Mace, you know perfectly. Whom did Madame Renaud love? So dearly that when she saw his dead body, she fell down in a swoon. I stared, dumbfounded. Her husband? I gasped. Poirot nodded. Her husband, or George-Bernad, whichever you like to call him. I rallied myself. But it is impossible. How impossible? Did we not agree just now that Madame de Briolle was in a position to blackmail George-Bernad? Yes, but... And did she not very efficiently blackmail Monsieur Renaud? That may be true enough, but... And it is not a fact that we know nothing of Monsieur Renaud's youth and upbringings. That he springs suddenly into existence as a French Canadian exactly 22 years ago. All that is so, I said more firmly, but you seems to me to be overlooking one silent point. What is that, my friend? Why, we have admitted that Georges planned the crime. That brings us to the ridiculous statement that he planned his own murder. Eh bien, mon ami, said Poirot placidly. That is just what he did it. Chapter 21. Hercule Poirot on the case. In a measured voice, Poirot began his exposition. It seems strange to you, mon ami, that a man should plan his own death, so strange that you prefer to reject the truth as fantastic and to revert to a story that in reality 10 times more impossible. Yes, Monsieur Renaud planned his own death, but there is one detail that perhaps escaped you. He did not intend to die. I shook my head, bewildered. But no, it is all most simple, really, said Poirot kindly. For the crime that Monsieur Renaud proposed a murder was not necessary, as I told you, but a body was. Let us reconstruct seeing events, this time from a different angle. Georges Cono flies from justice to Canada. There, under an assumed name, he marries and finally acquires a vast fortune in South America. But there is a nostalgia upon him for his own country. 20 years have elapsed. He is considerably changed in appearance, besides being a man of such eminence that no one is likely to connect him with a fugitive from justice many years ago. He deems it quite safe to return. He takes up his headquarters in England, but intends to spend the summers in France. An ill fortune, or that obscure justice which shapes men's ends and will not allow them to evade the consequences of their acts, takes him to Merlinville. There in the wall of France is the one person who is capable of recognizing him. It is of course a gold mine to Madame Dubriol, and a gold mine of which she is not slow to take advantage. He is helpless, absolutely in her power, and she bleeds him heavily. And then the inevitable happens. Jack Renaud falls in love with the beautiful girl. He seems almost daily and wishes to marry her. That rouses his father. At last, at all cost, he will prevent his son marrying the daughter of this evil woman. Jack Renaud knows nothing of his father's past, but Madame Renaud knows everything. She is a woman of great force of character and passionately devoted to her husband. They take counsel together. Renaud seems only one way of escape, death. He must appear to die. In reality, escaping to another country, where he will start again under an assumed name, and where Madame Renaud, having played the widow's part for a while, can join him. It is essential that she should have control of the money, so he alters his will. How they meant to manage the body business originally, I do not know. Possibly an art student's skeleton and a fire, or something of the kind, but long before their plans have matured, an event occurs which plays into their hands. A rough tramp, violent and abusive, finds his way into the garden. There is a struggle. Renaud seeks to eject him, and suddenly the tramp, an epileptic, falls down in a fit. He is dead. Renaud calls his wife. Together they drag him into the shed. As we know, the event had occurred just outside, and they realize the marvelous opportunity that has been vouchsafed them. The man bears no resemblance to Renaud, but he is middle-aged, of a usual French type. That is sufficient. I rather fancy that they sat on the bench up there, out of earshot from the house, discussing matters. Their plan was quickly made. The identification must rest solely on Madame Renaud's evidence. Jack Renaud and the chauffeur, who had been with his master 2 years, must be got out of the way. It was unlikely that the French woman servants would go near the body, and in any case, Renaud intended to the measures to deceive anyone not likely to appreciate details. Masters was sent off. A telegram dispatched to Jack, Buenos Aires being selected to give credence to the story that Renaud had decided upon. Having heard of me as a rather obscure elderly detective. He wrote his appeal for help, knowing that when I arrived, the production of the letter would have a profound effect upon the examining magistrate, which of course it did. They dressed the body of the tramp in a suit of Reynolds and left his ragged coat and trousers by the door of the shed, not daring to take them into the house. And then, to give credence to the tale Madame Reynolds was to tell, they drove the aeroplane dagger through his heart. That night Reynolds will first bind and gag his wife, and then, taking a spade, will dig a grave in that particular plot of ground where he knows a, how do you call it, bunker is to he made. It is essential that the body should be found. Madame Dubriol must have no suspicion. On the other hand, if a little time elapses, any dangers as to identify will be greatly lessened. Then Reynolds will don the tramp's rags and shuffle off to the station, where he will leave unnoticed by 12:10 train, since the crime will be supposed to have taken place 2 hours later. No suspicion can possibly attach to him. You see now his annoyance at the inopportune visit of the girl Bella. Every moment of delay is fatal to his plans. He gets rid of her as soon as he can. However, then to work. He leaves the front door slightly ajar to create the impression that the assassin left that way. He binds and gags Madame Reynolds, correcting his mistake of 22 years ago, which the looseness of the bonds caused suspicion to fall upon his accomplice, but leaving her primed with essentially the same story as he had invented before, proving the unconscious recoil of the mind against originality. The night is chilly, and he slips on an overcoat over his underclothing, intending to cast it into the grave with the dead man. He goes out by the window, smoothing over the flower bed carefully, and thereby furnishing the most possible evidence against himself. He goes out onto the lonely golf link, and he digs, and then, yes, then, said Poirot gravely, the justice that he has so long eluded overtakes him. An unknown hand stabs him in the back now. Hastings, you understand what I mean when I talk of two crimes. The first crime, the crime that Monsieur Reynolds, in his arrogance, asked us to investigate, is solved. But behind it lies a deeper riddle, and to solve that will be difficult, since the criminal, in his wisdom, has been content to avail himself of the devices prepared by Reynolds. It has been a particular perplexing and baffling mystery to solve. You were marvelous, Poirot, I said, with admiration. Absolutely marvelous. No one on earth but you would have done it. I think my praise pleased him. For once in his life he looked almost embraced. That poor Gerard, said Poirot, trying unsuccessfully to look modest. Without doubt, it is not all stupidity. He has had a la mauvaise change once or twice. That dark hair coiled round the dagger, for instance. To say the least, it was misleading. To tell you the truth, Poirot, I said slowly, even now I don't Coetzee. Whose hair was it? Madame Reynolds? Of course. That is where La mauvaise chance came in. Her hair, dark originally, is almost completely silvered. It might just as easily have been a grey hair, and then by no conceivable effort could Gerard have persuaded himself it came from the head of Jack Reynolds. But it is all of a piece. Always the facts must be twisted to fit the theory. Without doubt, when Madame Reynolds recovers, she will speak. The possibility of her son being accused of the murder never occurred to her. How should it, when she believed him safely at sea on board to Ansora? Voila in femi, Hastings. What force, what self-command. She only made one slip on his unexpected return. It does not matter now, and no one noticed. No one realized the significance of those words. What a terrible part she had been to play. Poor woman. Imagine the shock when she goes to identify the body, and instead of what she expects, sees the actual lifeless form of the husband she has believed miles away by now. No wonder she fainted. But since then, despite her grief and her despair, how resolutely she has played her part, and how the anguish of it must wring her. She cannot say a word to set us on the track of the real murderers. For her son's sake, no one must know that Paul Renaud was George-Bernad-Shaw, the criminal. Final and most bitter blow. She has admitted publicly that Madame Dubreuil was her husband's mistress, for a hint of blackmail might be fatal to her secret. How cleverly she dealt with the examining magistrate when he asked her if there was any mystery in her husband's past life. Nothing so romantic, I am sure, monsieur. It was perfect. The indulgent tone, the soupçon of sad mockery. At once, Monsieur Hortet felt himself foolish and melodramatic. Yes, she is a great woman. If she loved a criminal, she loved him royally. Pirate lost himself in contemplation. Once thinks more. Pirate, what about the piece of lead piping? You do not see. To disfigure the victim's face so that it would be unrecognizable. It was that which first set me on the right track, and that imbecile of a Gerard swarming all over it to look for matched ends. Did I not tell you that a clue of 2 feet long was quite a good as a clue of 2 inches? You see, Hastings, we must now start again. Who killed Monsieur Reynolds? Someone who was near the villa just before 12 o'clock that night. Someone who would benefit by his death. The description fits Jack Reynolds only too well. The crime need not have been premeditated. And then the dagger. I started. I had not realized that point. Of course, I said. Mrs. Reynolds' dagger was the second one we found in the tramp. There were 2 then, certainly, and since they were duplicates, it stands to reason that Jack Reynolds was the owner. But that would not trouble me so much. In fact, I had a little idea as to that. Now the waste indictment against him is again psychological. Heredity, mon ami, heredity. Like father, like son. Jack Reynolds, when all is said or done, is the son of George-bernad-shaw. His tone was grave and earnest, and I was impressed in spite of myself. What is your little idea that you mentioned just now? I asked. For answer, Poirot consulted his turnip-faced watch, and then asked, "What time is the afternoon boat from Calais?" "About 5, I believe." "That will do very well. We shall just have time. You are going to England?" "Yes, my friend." "Why?" "To find a possible witness." "Oh," with a rather peculiar smile upon his face, Poirot replied, "Miss Bella Dovian." "But how will you find her?" "What do you know about her?" "I know nothing about her, but I can guess a good deal. We may take it for granted that her name is Bella Dovian, and since that name was faintly familiar to Monsieur Stoner, though evidently not in connection with the Reynolds family, it is probable that she is on the stage." Jack Reynolds was a young man with plenty of money and 20 years of age. The stage is sure to have been the home of his first love. It tallies, too, with Monsieur Reynolds' attempt to placate her with a check. "I think I shall find her all right, especially with the help of this," and he brought out the photograph I had seen him take from Jack Reynolds' drawer. "With love from Bella" was scrawled across the corner, but it was not that which held my eyes fascinated. The likeness was not first rate, but for all that it was unmistakable to me. I felt a cold sinking, as though some unutterable calamity had befallen me. It was the face of Cinderella. Chapter 22. I Find Love. For a moment or two I sat as though frozen, the photograph still in my hand. Then, summoning all my courage to appear unmoved, I handed it back. At the same time, I stole a quick glance at Poirot. Had he noticed anything? But to my relief, he did not seem to be observing me. Anything unusual in my manner had certainly escaped him. He rose briskly to his feet. "We have no time to lose. We must make our departure with all dispatch. All is well. The sea, it will be calm." In the bustle of departure, I had no time for thinking, but once on board the boat, secure from Poirot's observation, I pulled myself together and attacked the fact dispassionately. How much did Poirot know, and why was he bent on finding this girl? Did he suspect her of having seen Jack Reynolds commit the crime, or did he suspect? But that was impossible. The girl had no grudge against the elder Reynolds, no possible motive for wishing his death. What had brought her back to the scene of the murder? I went over the facts carefully. She must have left the train at Calais, where I parted from her that day. No wonder I had been unable to find her on the boat. If she had dined in Calais and then taken a train out to Merlinville, she would have arrived at the Villa Genevieve just about the time that Francois said. That had she done when she left the house just after 10, presumably either gone to an hotel or returned to Calais, and then the crime had been committed on Tuesday night. On Thursday morning she was once more in Merlinville. Had she ever left France at all? I doubted it was very much. What kept her there? The hope of seeing Jack Reynolds? I had told her, as at the time we believed that he was on the high seas en route to Buenos Aires. Possibly she was aware that the Ansora had not sailed, but no, that she must have been Jack. Was that what Pirate was after? Had Jack Renauld, returning to see Marthe de Briolle, come face to face instead with Bella Dovian, the girl he had wordlessly thrown over? I began to see daylight. If that were indeed the case, it might furnish Jack with the alibi he needed. Yet, under those circumstances, his silence seemed difficult to explain. Why could he not have spoken out boldly? Did he fear for this former entanglement of his to come to the ears of Marthe de Briolle? I shook my head, dissatisfied. The thing had been harmless enough, a foolish boy and girl affair, and I reflected cynically that the son of a millionaire was not likely to be thrown over by a penniless French girl, who moreover loved him devotedly, without a much graver cause. Pirate reappeared, brisk and smiling at Dover, and our journey to London was uneventful. It was past 9 o'clock when we arrived, and supposed that we should return straight away to our rooms and do nothing till the morning. But Pirate had other plans. We must lose no time, mon ami. The news of the arrest will not be in England papers until the day after tomorrow. But still, we must lose no time. I did not quite follow his reasoning, but I merely asked how he proposed to find the girl. You remember Joseph Aarons, the theatrical agent? No. I assisted him in a little matter of a Japanese wrestler, a pretty little problem. I must recount it to you one day. He, without doubt, will be able to put us in the way of finding out what we want to know. It took us some time to run Mr. Aarons to earth, and it was after midnight when we finally managed it. He greeted Pirate with every evidence of warmth and professed himself ready to be of service to us in any way. There is not much about the profession I don't know, he said, beaming genially. Eh bien, Monsieur Aaron, I desire to find a young girl called Bella Dovian. Bella Dovian, I know the name, but for a moment I can't place it. What is her line? That I do not know, but here is her photograph. Mr. Aaron studied it for a moment, then his face lightened. Got it. He slapped his thigh. The Dulcibella kids, by the Lord. The Dulcibella kids, that is it. They are sisters, acrobats, dancers and singers. Give quite a good little turn. They are in the province somewhere, I believe. If they are not resting, they have been on a Paris for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Can you find out for me exactly where they are? Easy as a bird. You go home and I will send you round the dock in the morning. With this promise, we took leave of him. He was as good as his word. About 11 o'clock the following day, a scribbled note reached us. Dulcibella sisters are on at the palace in Coventry. Good luck to you. Without more ado, we started for Coventry. Pirate made no inquiries at the theatre, but contented himself with booking stalls for the variety performance that evening. The show was wearisome beyond words, or perhaps it was only my mood that made it seem so. Japanese families balanced themselves precariously would be fashionable men in greenish evening dress and exquisitely slicked hair, reeled off society patter and danced marvelously. Stout prima donnas sang at the top of the human register. A comic comedian endeavored to be Mr. George Robey and failed signally. At last the number went up, which announced the Dulcibella kids. My heart beat sickeningly. There she was. There they both were, the pair of them. One flaxen-haired, one dark, matching as to size, with short, fluffy skirts and immense buster brown bows. They looked a pair of extremely piquant children. They began to sing. Their voices were fresh and true, rather thin and music hallé, but attractive. It was quite a pretty little turn. They danced neatly and did some clever little acrobatic feats. The words of their song were crisp and catchy. When the curtain fell, there was a full need of applause. Evidently, the Dulcibella kids were a success. Suddenly, I felt that I could remain no longer. I must get out into the air. I suggested leaving to Poirot. Go by all means, mon ami. I amuse myself and will stay to the end. I will rejoin you later. It was only a few steps from the theatre to the hotel. I went up to the sitting room, ordered a whiskey and soda, and sat drinking it, staring meditatively into the empty grate. I heard the door open and turned my head, thinking it was Poirot. Then I jumped to my feet. It was Cinderella, who stood in the doorway. She spoke haltingly, her breath coming in little gasps. I saw you in front, you and your friend, when you got up to go. I was waiting outside and following you. Why are you here in Coventry? What were you doing there tonight? Is the man who was with you the detective? She stood there. The cloak he had wrapped around her stage dressing slipping from her shoulders. I saw the whiteness of her cheeks under the robe and heard the terror in her voice. And in that moment I understood everything. Understood why Poirot was seeking her and what she feared, and understood at least my own heart. Yes, I said gently. Is he looking for me? She half whispered. Then, as I did not answer for a moment, she slipped down by the big chair and burst into violent bitter weeping. I knelt down by her, holding her in my arms and soothing the hair back from her face. Don't cry, child, don't cry. For God's sake, you are safe here. I will take care of you. Don't cry. Darling, don't cry. I know everything. Oh, but you don't. I think I do. And after a moment, as her sobs grew quicker, I asked, it was you who took the dagger, wasn't it? Yes. That was why you wanted me to show you round and why you pretended to faint. Again she nodded. Why did you take the dagger? I asked presently. She replied as simply as a child. I was afraid there might be finger marks on it. But didn't you remember that you had wore gloves? She shook her head as though bewildered and then said slowly, are you going to give me up to the police? Good God, no. Her eyes sought mine long and earnestly, and then she asked in a little quiet voice that sounded afraid of itself, why not? It seemed a strange place and a strange time for a declaration of love, and God knows, in all my imagining, I had never pictured love coming to me in such a gaze. But I answered simply and naturally enough, because I love you, Cinderella. She bent her head down as though ashamed, and muttered in a broken voice, you can't, not if you know. And then, as though rallying herself, she faced me squarely and asked, what do you know then? I know that you came to see Mr. Ronald that night. He offered you a check and you tore it up indignantly. Then you left the house. I paused. Go on, what next? I don't know whether you know Jack Reynolds would be coming at night or whether you just waited about on the chance of seeing him. But you did wait about. Perhaps you were just miserable and walking aimlessly. But at any rate, just before 12, you were still near there and you saw a man on the golf links. Again I paused. I had leaped to the truth in a flash as she entered the room. But now the picture rose before me even more convincingly. I saw vividly the peculiar pattern of the overcoat on the dead body of Mr. Reynolds, and I remembered the amazing likeness that had startled me into believing for one instant that the dead man had risen from the dead when his son burst into our conclave in the salon. Go on, repeated the girl steadily. I fancy his back was to you. But you recognized him, or though you recognized him, the gait and the carriage were familiar to you, and the pattern of his overcoat. I paused. You used a treat in one of your letters to Jack Reynolds when you saw him there. Your anger and jealousy drove you mad, and you struck. I don't believe for a minute that you mean to kill him, but you did kill him, Cinderella. She had flung up her hands to cover her face, and in a choked voice she said, you are right, you are right. I can see it all as you tell it. Then she turned on me almost savagely. And you love me, knowing what you do. How can you love me? I don't know, I said a little wearily. I think love is like that, a thing one cannot help. I have tried, I know, even since the first day I met you, and love has been too strong for me. And then suddenly, when I least expected it, she broke down again, casting herself down on the floor and sobbing wildly. Oh, I can't, she cried. I don't know what to do. I don't know which way to turn. Oh, pity me, someone, and tell me what to do. Again I knelt by her, soothing her as best I could. Don't be afraid of me, Bella. For God's sake, don't be afraid of me. I love you, that is true. But I don't want anything in return. Only let me help you. Love him still if you have to, but let me help you as he can't. It was as though she had been turned to stone by my words. She raised her head from her hand and stared at me. You think that? She whispered. You think that I love Jack Reynolds? Then, half laughing, half crying, she flung her arms passionately round my neck and pressed her sweet wet face to mine. Not as I love you, she whispered. Never I love you. Her lips brushed my cheek, and then, seeking my mouth, kissed me again and again with a sweetness and fire beyond belief. The wildness of it and the wonder I shall not forget. No, not as long as I live. It was a sound in the doorway that made us look up. Poirot was standing there looking at us. I did not hesitate. With a bound I reached him and pinioned his arms to his side. Quick, I said to the girl, get out of here as fast as you can. I will hold him. With one look at me, she fled out of the room, past us. I held Poirot in a grip of iron. Mon ami, observed the latter mildly. You do this sort of thing very well. The strong man holds me in his grasp and I am helpless as a child. But all this is uncomfortable and slightly ridiculous. Let us sit down and be calm. You won't pursue her, won't you? No. Am I? Gerard, release me, my friend, keeping a suspicious eye upon him, for I paid Poirot the compliment of knowing that I was no match for him. In astuteness, I relaxed my grip, and he sank into an armchair, feeling his arm tenderly. It is that you have the strength of a bull when you are roused, Hastings, a beard. And do you think you have behaved well to your old friend? I show you the girl's photograph and you recognized it, but you never say a word. There was no need, if you know that I recognized it, I said rather bitterly. So Poirot had known all along. I had not received him for an instant. Tata, you did not know what I know that, and tonight you helped the girl to escape when we have found her with so much trouble beyond. It comes to this. Are you going to work with me or against me, Hastings? For a moment or two I did not answer. To break with my old friend gave me great pain. Yes, I must definitely rage myself against him. Would he ever forgive me? I wondered. He had been strangely calm so far, but I knew him to possess marvelous self-command. Poirot, I said, I am sorry. I admit I have behaved badly to you over this, but sometimes one has no choice, and in future I must take my own line. Poirot nodded his head several times. I understand, he said. The mocking light had quite died out of his eyes, and he spoke with a sincerity and kindness that surprised me. It is that, my friend, is it not? It is love that has come not as you imagined it, all cock-a-hoop with fine feathers, but sadly with bleeding feet. Well, well, I warned you. When I realized that this girl must have taken the dagger, I warned you. Perhaps you remember, but already it was too late. But tell me, how much do you know? I met his eyes squarely. Nothing that you could tell me would be any surprise to me. Poirot, understand that, but in case you think of resuming your search for Miss Dovian, I should like you to know one thing clearly. If you have any idea that she was concerned in the crime, or was the mysterious lady who called upon Mr. Renault that night, you are wrong. I travelled home from France with her that day and parted from her at Victoria that evening, so that it is clearly impossible for her to have been in Marlinville. A Poirot looked at me thoughtfully. And you would swear to that in a court of law? Most certainly I would. Poirot rose and bowed. Mon ami, why? I, Amar. It can perform miracles. It is decidedly ingenious what you have thought of there. It defeats even Hercule Poirot's. Chapter 23. Difficulties ahead. For a moment of stress, such as I have just described, reaction is bound to set in. I retired to rest that night on a note of triumph, but I awoke to realize that I was by no means out of the word true. I could see no flaw in the alibi I had so suddenly conceived. I had but to stick to my story, and I failed to see how Bella could be convicted in face of it. But I felt the need of trading fairly. Poirot would not take defeat lying down. Somehow or other, he would endeavor to turn the table on me, and that in the way, and at the moment when I least expected it. We met at breakfast the following morning, as though nothing had happened. Poirot's good temper was imperturbable. Yet I thought I detected a film of reserve in his manner, which was new. After breakfast, I announced my intention of going out for a stroll. A malicious gleam shot through Pirate's eyes. If it is information you seek, you need not be at the pain of deranging yourself. I can tell you all you wish to know. The Dulcibella sisters have cancelled their contract and have left Coventry for an unknown destination. Is that really so, Pirate? You can take it from me, Hastings. I made enquiries the first thing this morning. After all, what else did you expect? True enough, nothing else could be expected under the circumstances. Cinderella had profited by the slight start as I had been able to secure her, and would certainly not lose a moment in removing herself from the reach of the pursuer. It was what I had intended and planned. Nevertheless, I was aware of being plunged into a network of fresh difficulties. I had absolutely no means of communicating with the girl, and it was vital that she would know the line of defense that had occurred to me, and which I was prepared to carry out. Of course, it was possible that she might try to send words to me in some way or another, but I hardly thought it likely she would know the risk she ran of a message being intercepted by Poirot, thus setting him on her track once more. Clearly her only course was to disappear utterly for the time being. But in the meantime, what was Poirot doing? I studied him attentively. He was wearing his most innocent air and staring meditatively into the far distance. He looked together too placid and supine to give me reassurance. I had learned with Poirot that the less dangerous he looked, the more dangerous he was. His quiescence alarmed me. Observing a troubled quality in my glance, he smiled benignantly. You are puzzled, Hastings. You ask yourself why I do not launch myself in pursuit? Well, something of the kind. It is what you would do were you in my place. I understand that, but I am not of that who enjoy rushing up and down a country seeking a needle in a haystack, as you English say. No. Let Mademoiselle Bella Dovian go. Without a doubt, I shall be able to find her when the time comes. Until then, I am content to wait. I stared at him doubtfully. Was he seeking to mislead me? I had an irritating feeling that even now he was master of the situation. My sense of superiority was gradually waning. I had contrived the girl's escape and evolved a brilliant scheme for saving her from the consequences of her rash act, but I could not rest easy. In my mind, Poirot's perfect calm awakened 1,000 apprehensions. I suppose, Poirot, I said rather difficultly, I mustn't ask what you plan are. I have perfected the right, but not at all. There is no secret about them. We returned to France without delay. Precisely, we. You know very well that you cannot afford to let Papa Poirot out of your sight. Eh, it is not so, my friend, but remain in England by all means if you wish. I shook my head. He had hit the nail on the head. I could not afford to let him out of my sight. Although I could not expect his confidence after what had happened, I could still check his action. The only danger to Bella lay with him. Gerard and the French police were indifferent to her existence. At all cost, I must keep near Poirot. Poirot observed me attentively as those reflections passed through my mind and gave me a nod of satisfaction. I am right, am I not? And as you are quite capable of trying to follow me, disguised with some absurdity such as a false beard which everyone would perceive beyond attentive. I much prefer that we should voyage together. It would annoy me greatly that anyone should mock themselves to you. Very well, then, but it is only fair to warn you. I know all. You are my enemy. Be my enemy. Then it does not worry me at all. So long as it is all fair and above board, I don't mind. You have to the full of English passion for fair play. Now your scruples are satisfied. Let us depart immediately. There is no time to be lost. Our stay in England has been short but sufficient. I know what I wanted to know. The tone was light, but I read a veiled menace into the words. Still, I began and stopped. Still, as you say, without doubt, you are satisfied with the part you are playing. Me, preoccupy myself with Jack Reynolds. Jack Reynolds. The word gave me a start. I had completely forgotten that aspect of the case. Jack Reynolds in prison, with the shadow of the guillotine looming over him. I saw the part I was playing in a more sinister light. I could save Bella, yes, but in doing so, I ran the risk of sending an innocent man to his death. I pushed the thought from me with horror. It could not be. He would be acquitted. Certainly he would be acquitted. But the cold fear came back. Suppose he were not. What then? Could I have it on my conscience? Horrible thought. Would it come to that? In the end, a decision. Bella and Jack Reynolds. The promptings of my heart were to save the girl I loved at any cost to myself. But if the cost were to another, the problem was altered. What would the girl herself say? I remembered that no word of Jack Reynolds' arrest had passed my lips. As yet she was in total ignorance of the fact that her former lover was in prison, charged with a hideous crime which he had not committed. Then she knew. How would she act? Would she permit her life to be saved at the expense of his? Certainly, she must do nothing rash. Jack Reynolds might and probably would be acquitted without any intervention on her part. He is so good, but he was not. That was the terrible, the unanswerable problem. I fancied that she ran no risk of the extreme penalty. The circumstances of the crime were quite different in her case. She could plead jealousy and extreme provocation, and her youth and beauty would go for much. The fact that by a tragic mistake it was Mr. Reynolds and not his son who paid the penalty would not alter the motive of the crime. But in any case, however lenient the sentence of the court, it must mean a long term of imprisonment. No, Bella must be protected, and at the same time Jack Reynolds must be saved. How this was to be accomplished I did not see clearly, but I pinned my faith to Poirot. He knew, come what might, he would manage to save an innocent man. He must find some pretext other than the real one. It might be difficult, but he would manage it somehow, and with Bella unsuspected and Jack Reynolds acquitted, all would end satisfactorily. So I told myself repeatedly, but at the bottom of my heart there still remained a cold fear. Chapter 24. Save him. We crossed from England by the evening boat, and the following morning saw us in St. Omer, whither Jack Reynolds had been taken. Poirot lost no time in visiting Mr. Hortet, as he did not seem disposed to make any objection to my accompanying him. I bore him company. After various formalities and preliminaries, we were conducted to the examining magistrate's room. He greeted us cordially. I was told that you had returned to England, Monsieur Poirot. I am glad to find that such is not the case. It is true, I went there, Monsieur, but it was only for a flying visit, a side issue, but one that I fancied might repay investigation, and it did, eh? Poirot shrugged his shoulders. Mr. Hortet nodded, sighing. We must resign ourselves, I fear, that animal Gerard. His manners are abominable, but he is undoubtedly clear and clever. Not much chance of that one making a mistake. You think not? It was the examining magistrate's turn to shrug his shoulders. Oh well, speaking frankly, in confidence, of course. Can you come to any other conclusion? Frankly, there seem to me to be many points that are obscure, such as, but Poirot was not to be drawn. I have not yet tabulated them, he remarked. It was a general reflection that I was making. I liked the young man, and should be sorry to believe him guilty of such a hideous crime. By the way, what has he to say for himself on the matter? The magistrate frowned. I cannot understand him. He seems incapable of putting up any sort of defense. He has been most difficult to get him to answer questions. He contents himself with a general denial, and beyond that takes refuge in a most obstinate silence. I am interrogating him against tomorrow. Perhaps you would like to be present. We accepted the invitation with embracement. A distressing case, said the magistrate with a sigh. My sympathy for Madame Reynolds is profound. How is Madame Reynolds? She has not yet recovered consciousness. It is merciful in a way. Poor woman, she is being spared much. The doctors say that there is no danger, but that when she comes to herself, she must be kept as quiet as possible. It was, I understand, quite as much the shock as she felt which caused her present state. It would be terrible if her brain became unhinged, but I should not wonder at all. No, really, not at all. Mr. Hortet leaned back, shaking his head with a sort of mournful enjoyment as he envisaged the gloomy prospect. He roused himself at length and observed with a start. That reminds me, I have here a letter for you, Monsieur Poirot. Let me see. Where did it put it? He proceeded to rummage among his papers. At last he found the missive and handed it to Poirot. It was sent under cover to me in order that I must forward it to you, he explained, but as you left no address, I could not do so. Poirot studied the letter curiously. It was addressed in a long, sloping foreign hand, and the writing was decidedly a woman's. Poirot did not open it. Instead, he put it in his pocket and rose to his feet. Till tomorrow then. Many thanks for your courtesy and amiability. But not at all. I am always at your service. We were just leaving the building when we came face to face with Gerard. looking more dandified than ever and thoroughly pleased with himself. Ah, Monsieur Poirot, he cried early. You have returned from England then? As you see, said Poirot. The end of the case is not far off now, I fancy. I agree with you, Monsieur Gerard. Poirot spoke in a subdued tone. His crestfallen manner seemed to delight the other. Of all the milk and water criminals, not an idea of defending himself. It is extraordinary. So extraordinary that it gives one to think. Does it not? Suggested Poirot mildly. But Gerard was not even listening. He twirled his cane amicably. Well, goodbye. Good day, Monsieur Poirot. I am glad you are satisfied of young Reynolds' guilt at last. Pardon, but I am not in the least satisfied. Jack Reynolds is innocent. Gerard stared for a moment, then burst out laughing, tapping his head significantly with the brief remark, "Talk." Poirot drew himself up, a dangerous light shot in his eyes. Monsieur Gerard, throughout the case, your manner to me has been deliberately insulting. You need teaching a lesson. I am prepared to wager you 500 francs that I find the murderer of Monsieur Reynolds before you do. It is agreed. Gerard stared helplessly at him and murmured again, "Talk, come now," urged Poirot. It is agreed. I have no wish to take your money from you. Make your mind easy. You will not. Oh, well then, I agree. You speak of my manner to you being insulting. Well, once or twice your manner has annoyed me. I am enchanted to hear it, said Poirot. Good morning, Monsieur Gerard. Come, Hastings. I said no word as we walked along the street. My heart was heavy. Poirot had displayed his intentions only too plainly. I doubted more than ever my power of saving Bella from the consequences of her act. This unlucky encounter with Gerard had roused Poirot and put him on his mettle. Suddenly I felt a hand laid on my shoulder and turned to face Gabriel Stoner. We stopped and greeted him, and he proposed strolling with us back to our hotel. And what are you doing here, Monsieur Stoner? Inquired Poirot. One must stand by one's friend, replied the other dryly, especially when they are unjustly accused. Then you do not believe that Jack Reynolds committed the crime? I asked eagerly. Certainly I don't. I know the lad. I admit that there have been one or two things in this business that have staggered me completely, but nonetheless, in spite of his fool way of taking it, I will never believe that Jack Reynolds is a murderer. My heart warmed to the secretary. His words seemed to lift a secret weight from my heart. I have no doubt that many people feel as you do, I exclaimed. There is really absurdly little evidence against him. I should say that there was no doubt of his acquittal, no doubt whatever. But Stoner hardly responded as I could have wished. I would give a lot to think as you do, he said gravely. He turned to Poirot. What is your opinion, Monsieur? I think that things look very black against him, said Poirot quietly. You believe him guilty? Said Stoner sharply. No, but I think he will find it hard to prove his innocence. He is behaving so damned queerly, muttered Stoner. Of course, I realize that there is a lot more in this affair than meets the eye. Gerard's not wise to that because he is an outsider. But the whole thing has been damned odd. As to that, least said, soonest mended. If Mrs. Ronald wants to hush anything up, I will take my cue from her. It is her show, and I have too much respect for her judgment to stow my oar in. But I can't get behind this attitude of Jack's. Anyone would think he wanted to be thought guilty, but it is absurd. I cried, bursting in. For one thing, the dagger. I paused, uncertain as to how much Poirot would wish me to reveal. I continued, choosing my words carefully. We know that the dagger could not have been in Jack Reynolds' possession that evening. Mrs. Reynolds know that. True, said Stoner. When she recovered, she will doubtless say all this and more. Well, I must be leaving you. One moment, Poirot's hand arrested his departure. Can you arrange for word to be sent to me at once should Mrs. Reynolds recover consciousness? Certainly, that is easily done. That point about the dagger is good, Poirot, I urged as we went upstairs. I couldn't speak very plainly before Stoner. That was quite right of you. We might as well keep the knowledge to ourselves as long as we can. As to the dagger, your point hardly helped Jack Reynolds. You remember that I was absent for an hour this morning before we started from London? Yes, well, I was employed in trying to find the firm Jack Reynolds employed to convert his souvenir. It was not very difficult. A.B.N. Hastings they made to his order, not 2 paper knives, but 3. So that after giving one to his mother and one to Bella Duvian, there was a third which he doubtless retained for his own use. No, Hastings, I fear the dagger question will not help us to save him from the guillotine. It won't come to that, I cried, stunned. Poirot shook his head uncertainly. You will save him, I cried positively. Poirot glanced at me dryly. Have you not rendered it impossible, mon ami? Some other way, I muttered. Ah, Sir Christie, but it is miracle. You ask from me. No, say no more. Let us instead see what is in this letter. And he drew out the envelope from his breast pocket. His face contracted as he read. Then he handed the one flimsy sheet to me. There are other women in the world who suffer, Hastings. The writing was blurred and the note had evidently been written in great agitation. Dear Mr. Poirot, if you get this, I beg of you to come to my aid. I have no one to turn to, and at all costs Jack must be saved. I implore of you, on my knees, to help us. Marthe Dubriol handed it back, moved. You will go at once. We will command an auto. Half an hour later saw us at the Villa Margheriti. Marthe was at the door to meet us and let Poirot in, clinging with both hands to one of his. Ah, you have come. It is good of you. I have been in despair, not knowing what to do. They will not let me go to see him in prison even. I suffer horribly. I am nearly mad. Is it true what they say, that he does not deny the crime? But that is madness. It is impossible that he should have done it. Never for 1 minute will I believe it. Neither do I believe it, mademoiselle, said Poirot gently. But then, why does he not speak? I do not understand. Perhaps because he is screening someone, suggested Poirot, watching her. Marthe frowned. Screening someone? Do you mean his mother? Ah, from the beginning I have suspected her. Who inherit all that vast fortune. She does. It is easy to wear widow's weeds and play the hypocrite. And they say that when he was arrested, she fell down like that. She made a dramatic gesture, and without a doubt, Monsieur Stoner, the secretary, he helped her. They were thick as thieves. Those two, it is true. She is older than he. But what do men care? If a woman is rich? There was a hint of bitterness in her tone. Stoner was in England, I put in. He says so. But who knows? Mademoiselle, said Poirot quietly. If we are to work together, you and I, we must have things clear. First, I will ask you a question. Yes, monsieur. Are you aware of your mother's real name? Martha looked at him for a minute, then letting her head fall forward on her arms, she burst into tears. There, said my Poirot, patting her on the shoulder. Calm yourself, petite. I see that you know. Now a second question. Did you know who Monsieur Renault was? Monsieur Renault. She raised her head from her hand and gazed at him wonderingly. Ah, I see you do not know that. Now listen to me carefully. Step by step, he went over the case, much as he had done to me on the day of our departure for England. Martha listened spellbound. When he had finished, she drew a long breath. But you are wonderful, magnificent. You are the greatest detective in the world. With a swift gesture, she slipped off her chair and knelt before him with an abandonment that was wholly French. Save him, monsieur, she cried. I love him so. Oh, save him, save him. Chapter 25. An unexpected denouement. We were present the following morning at the examination of Jack Renault. Short as the time had been, I was shocked at the change that had taken place in the young prisoner. His cheeks had fallen in. There were deep black circles round his eyes, and he looked haggard and distraught, as one who would sleep in vain for several nights. He betrayed no emotion at seeing us. Renault, began the magistrate, do you deny that you were in Merlinville on the night of the crime? Jack did not reply at once. Then he said with a hesitancy of manner which was piteous, I told you that I was in Cherbourg. The magistrate turned sharply. Send in the station witness. In a moment or two, the door opened to admit a man who I recognized as being a porter at Merlin Station. You were on duty on the night at 7th June. Yes, monsieur. You witnessed the arrival of 11:40 train. Yes, monsieur. Look at the prisoner. Do you recognize him as having been one of the passengers to alight? Yes, monsieur. There is no possibility of your being mistaken. No, monsieur. I know Monsieur Jack Renault well. Nor of your being mistaken as to the date. No, monsieur, because it was the following morning, 8th June, that we heard of the murder. Another railway officer was brought in and confirmed the first one's evidence. The magistrate looked at Jack Renault. These men have identified you positively. What have you to say? Jack shrugged his shoulders. Nothing. Renault, continued the magistrate, do you recognize this? He took something from the table by his side and held it out to the prisoner. I shuddered as I recognized the aeroplane dagger "Pardon," cried Jack's counsel, Maitre Grossier. "I demand to speak to my client," before he answered that question. But Jack Reynolds had no consideration for the feeling of the wrecked Grossier. He waved his aside and replied quietly, "Certainly, I recognize it. It was a present given by me to my mother as a souvenir of the war. Is there, as far as you know, any duplicate of that dagger in existence?" Again Maitre Grossier burst out, and again Jack overrode him. "Not that I know of. The setting was my own design." Even the magistrate almost gasped at the boldness of the reply. It did, in very truth, seem as though Jack was rushing on his faith. I realized, of course, the vital necessity he was under of concealing, for Bella's sake, the fact that there was a duplicate dagger in the case. As long as there was supposed to be only one weapon, no suspicion was likely to attach to the girl who had had the second paper knife in her possession. He was valiantly shielding the woman he had once loved, but at what cost to himself? I began to realize the magnitude of the task I had to slightly set pirate. It would not be easy to secure the acquittal of Jack Reynolds by anything short of the truth. Mr. Hortet spoke again with a peculiarly biting inflection. "Madame Reynolds told us that this dagger was on her dressing table on the night of the crime. But Madame Reynolds is a mother. It will doubtless astonish you, Reynolds, but I consider it highly likely that Madame Reynolds was mistaken, and that by inadvertence perhaps you had taken it with you to Paris. Doubtless you will contradict me." I saw the lad's handcuffed hands clench themselves. The perspiration stood out in beads upon his brow, as with a supreme effort he interrupted Mr. Hortet in a hoarse voice. "I shall not contradict you. It is possible." It was a stupefying moment. Maitre Grossier rose to his feet, protesting. "My client has undergone a considerable nervous strain. I should wish it put on record that I do not consider him unanswerable for what he says." The magistrate quelled him angrily. For a moment a doubt seemed to arise in his own mind. Jack Reynolds had almost overdone his part. He leaned forward and gazed at the prisoner searchingly. "Do you fully understand, Reynolds, that one, the answer you have given me, I shall have no alternative but to commit you for trial?" Jack's pale face flushed. He looked steadily back. "Monsieur Hortet, I swear that I did not kill my father." But the magistrate's brief moment of doubt was over. He laughed a short, unpleasant laugh. Without doubt, they are always innocent, our prisoners. By your own mouth you are condemned. You can offer no defense, no alibi, only a mere assertion which would not deceive a baby, that you are not guilty. You killed your father, Reynolds, a cruel and cowardly murder, for the sake of the money which you believed would come to you at his death. Your mother was an accessory after the fact. Doubtless, in view of the fact that she acted as a mother, the court will extend an indulgence to her that they will not accord to you, and rightly so. Your crime was a horrible one, to be held in abhorrence by gods and men. Mr. Hotet was interrupted to his intense annoyance. The door was pushed open. Monsieur Le Jude, stammered the attendant. There is a lady who says what? Cried the justly incensed magistrate. This is highly irregular. I forbid it. I absolutely forbid it. But a slender gesture pushed the stammering gentleman aside, dressed all in black, with a long veil that hid her face. She advanced into the room. My heart gave a sickening throb. She had come then. All my efforts were in vain. Yet I could not but admire the courage that had led her to take this step so unfalteringly. She raised her veil, and I gasped, for though as like her as two peas, this girl was not Cinderella. On the other hand, now that I saw her without the fair wig she had worn on the stage, I recognized her as the girl of the photograph in Jack Reynolds' room. You are the Duke do instruction, Monsieur Hotet? She queried. Yes, but I forbid. My name is Bella Duvian. I wish to give myself up for the murder of Mr. Reynolds. Chapter 26. I receive a letter. My friend, you will know all when you get this. Nothing that I can say will move Bella. She has gone out to give herself up. I am tired out with struggling. You will know, now that I deceive you, that where you gave me trust I replied you with lies. It will seem perhaps indefensible to you, but I should like, before I go out of your life forever, to show you just how it all come out. If I knew that you forgave me, it would make life easier for me. It wasn't for myself, I didn't. That is the only thing I can put forward to say for myself. I will begin from the day I met you in the boat train from Paris. I was uneasy then about Bella. She was just desperate about Jack Reynolds. She would have lain down on the ground for him to walk on, and then he began to change and stop writing so often. She began getting in a state. She got it into her head that he was keen on another girl. And of course, as it turned out afterward, she was quite right there. She would made up her mind to go to their villa at Merlinville and try and see Jack. She knew I was against it and tried to give me the slip. I found she was not on the train at Calais and determined I would not go to England without her. I had an uneasy feeling that something awful was going to happen if I couldn't prevent it. I met the next train from Paris. She was on it and set upon going out, then and there to Merlinville. I argued with her for all I was worth, but it wasn't any good. She was all struck up and set upon having her own way. Well, I washed my hands of it. I would done all I could. It was getting late. I went to an hotel and Bella started for Merlinville. I still couldn't fake off my feeling of what the books call impending disaster. The next day came, but no Bella. She would made a date with me to meet at a hotel, but she didn't keep it. No sign of her all day. I got more and more anxious. Then came an evening paper with the news. It was awful. I couldn't be sure, of course, but I was terribly afraid. I figured it out that Bella had met Papa Reynolds and told him about her and Jack, and that he would insulted her or something like that. We have both got terribly quick-tempered. Then all the masked foreigner business came out, and I began to feel more at ease. But it still worried me that Bella hadn't kept her date with me. By the next morning, I was so rattled that I would just got to go and see what I could. First thing, I ran up against you. You know all that. When I saw the dead man looking so like Jack and wearing Jack's fancy overcoat, I knew. And there was the identical paper knife, wicked little thing that Jack had given Bella. 10 to 1, it had her finger marks on it. I can't hope to explain to you the sort of helpless horror of that moment. I only saw one thing clearly. I must get hold of that dagger and get right away with it before they found out it was gone. I pretended to faint, and while you were away getting water, I took the thing and hid it away in my dress. I told you that I was staying at the Hotel du Fair, but of course, really I made a beeline back to Calais and then on to England, the first boat. When we were in mid-channel, I dropped that little devil of a dagger into the sea. Then I felt I could breathe again. Bella was in our digs in London. She looked like nothing on God's earth. I told her what I would done and that she was pretty safe for the time being. She stared at me and then began laughing. It was horrible to hear her. I felt that the best thing to do was to keep busy. I would go mad if she had time to brood on what she would done. Luckily, we got an engagement at once, and then I saw you and your friend watching us that night. I was frantic. You must suspect, or you wouldn't have tracked us down. I had to know the worst, so I followed you. I was desperate, and then before I would had time to say anything, I tumbled to it that it was me you suspected, not Bella, or at least that you thought I was Bella, since I would stolen the dagger. I wish, honey, that you could see back into my mind at that moment. I would forgive you. Me, perhaps. I was so frightened and muddled and desperate. All I could get clearly was that you would try and serve me. I didn't know whether you'd be willing to serve her. I thought very likely not. It wasn't the same thing, and I couldn't risk it. Bella, my teen. I would go to the best for her. So I went on lying. I felt mean. I feel mean still. That is all. Enough to, you will say. I expect I ought to have trusted you if I had. As soon as the news was in the paper that Jack Reynolds had been arrested, it was all up. Bella wouldn't even wait to see how things went. I am very tired. I can't write anymore. She had begun to sigh herself Cinderella, but had crossed that out and written instead, Dulcie Duvian. It was an ill-written, blurred epistle, but I have kept it to this day. Poirot was with me when I read it. The sheets fell from my hand and I looked across at him. Did you know all the time that it was the other? Yes, my friend. Then did you not tell me? To begin with, I could hardly believe it conceivable that you could make such a mistake. You had been the photograph. The sisters are very alike, but by no means incapable of distinguishment. but the fair hair, a wig, worn for the sake of a piquant contrast on the stage. Is it conceivable that with twins one should be fair and one dark? Why didn't you tell me that night at the hotel in Coventry? You were rather high-handed in your methods, mon ami, said Poirot dryly. You did not give me a chance, but afterwards, well, to begin with, I was hurt at your want of faith in me, and then I wanted to see whether your feelings would stand the test of time. In fact, whether it was love or a flash in the pan with you. I should not have left you long in your error. I nodded. His tone was too affectionate for me to bear resentment. I looked down on the sheet of letters. Suddenly I picked them up from the floor and pushed them across to him. Read that, I said. I would like you to. He read it through in silence. Then he looked up at me. What is it that worries you, Hastings? This was quite a new mood in Poirot. His mocking manner seemed laid quite aside. I was able to say what I wanted without too much difficulty. She doesn't say. Well, not whether she cares for me or not. Poirot turned back the pages. I think you are mistaken, Hastings. Where? I cried, leaning forward eagerly. Poirot smiled. She tells you that in every line of the letter, mon ami. But where am I to find her? There is no address on the letter. There is a French stamp. That is all. Excite yourself not. Leave it to Papa Poirot. I can find her for you as soon as I have 5 little minutes. Chapter 27. Jack Reynolds' story. Congratulations, Monsieur Jack, said Poirot, bringing the lad warmly on the hand. Young Reynolds had come to us as soon as he was liberated before starting for Merlinville to rejoin Marthe and his mother. Stoner accompanied him. His heartiness was in strong contrast to the lad's wan looks. It was plain that the boy was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. He smiled mournfully at Poirot and said in a low voice, I went through it to protect her, and now it is all no use. You could hardly expect the girl to accept the price of your life, remarked Stoner dryly. She was bound to come forward when she saw you heading straight for the guillotine. Ma foi, and you were heading for it too, added Poirot with a slight tingle. You would have had Marthe Grosser's death from rage on your conscience if you had gone on. He was a well-meaning ass, I suppose, said Jack, but he worried me horribly. You see, I couldn't very well take him into my confidence, but my God, what is going to happen about Bella? If I were you, said Poirot frankly, I should not distress myself unduly. The French courts are very lenient to youth and beauty and the crime passional. A clever lawyer will make out a great case of extenuating circumstances. It will not be pleasant for you. I don't care about that. You see, Monsieur Poirot, in a way I do feel guilty of my father's murder, but for me and my entanglement with this girl, he would be alive and well today, and then my cursed carelessness in taking away the wrong overcoat. I can't help feeling responsible for his death. It will haunt me forever. No, I said smoothly. Of course, it is horrible to me to think that Bella killed my father, resumed Jack, but I would treated her shamefully after I met Marthe and realized I would made a mistake. I ought to have written and told her so honestly, but I was so terrified of a row and of its coming to Marthe's ears, and her thinking there was more in it than there ever had been, that, well, I was a coward and went on hoping the thing would die down of itself. I just drifted, in fact, not realizing that I was driving a poor kid desperate. If she did really knifed me, as she meant to, I should have got no more than my deserts, and the way she is coming forward now is downright plucky. I did have stood the racket, up to the end. He was silent for a moment or two, and then burst out on another tack. What gets me in why the governor should be wandering about in underclothes and my overcoat at that time of night. I suppose I would just given the foreign journeys the slip, and my mother must have made a mistake about its being 2 o'clock. Then they came, or it wasn't all a frame up, was it? I mean, my mother couldn't think that it was me. Poirot reassured him quickly. No, Monsieur Jack, have no fears on that score. As for the rest, I will explain to you one of these days. It is rather curious, but it will you recount to us exactly what did occur on that terrible evening. There is very little to tell. I came from Cherbourg, as I told you, in order to see Marthe before going to the other end of the world. The train was late, and I decided to take the shortcut across the golf links. I could easily get into ground of Ville Margheriti. From there, I had nearly reached the place. Then he paused and swallowed. Yes, I heard a terrible cry. It wasn't loud, a sort of choke and gasp, but it frightened me. For a moment I stood rooted to the spot. Then I came round the corner of a bush. There was a moonlight. I saw the grave and a figure lying face downward with a dagger sticking in the back. And then I looked up and saw her. She was looking at me as though she saw a ghost. It is what she must have thought me at first. All expression seemed frozen out of her face by horror, and then she gave a cry and turned and ran. He stopped, trying to master his emotion, and afterwards asking Poirot gently, I really don't know. I stayed there for a time, dashed, and then I realized I would better get away as fast as I could. It didn't occur to me that they would suspect me, but I was afraid of being called upon to give evidence against her. I walked to St. Beauvais, as I told you, and got a car from there back to Cherbourg. A knock came at door, and a page entered with a telegram, which he delivered to Stoner. He tore it open. Then he got up from his seat. Mrs. Renaud has regained consciousness, he said. Poirot sprang to his feet. Let us all go to Merlinville at once. A hurried departure was made forthwith. Stoner, at Jack's insistence, agreed to stay behind and do all that could be done for Bella Douvian. Poirot, Jack Renaud, and set off in the Renaud car. The run took just over 40 minutes. As we approached the doorway of Villa Margheriti, Jack Renaud shot a questioning glance at Poirot. How would it be if you went on first to break the news to my mother that I am free, while you break in person to Mademoiselle Marthe, eh? finished Poirot with a twinkle. But yes, by all means, I was about to propose such an arrangement myself. Jack Reynolds did not wait for more. Stopping the car, he swung himself out and ran up the path to the front door. We went on it, the car and the Villa Geneve. Poirot, I said, do you remember how we arrived here that first day and were met by the news of Mr. Reynolds' murder? Ah, yes, truly, not so long ago either. But what a lot of things have happened since then, especially for you, mon ami. Yes, indeed, I sighed. You are regarding it from the sentimental standpoint, Hastings. That was not my meaning. We will hope that Mademoiselle Belle will be dealt with leniently. And after all, Jack Reynolds cannot marry both the girls. I spoke from a professional standpoint. This is not a crime, well ordered and regular, such as a detective delight in. The Mice and Sons, designed by George Cono, that indeed is perfect, but the denouement, oh no, a man killed by accident in a girl's fit of anger. Ah, indeed, what order or method is there that? And in the midst of a fit of laughter on my part at Poirot's peculiarities, the door was opened by Francois. Poirot explained that he must see Mrs. Reynolds at once, and the old woman conducted him upstairs. I remained in the salon. It was some time before Poirot reappeared. He was looking unusually grave. Was voila, Hastings, sacre tonnerre, but there are quells ahead. What do you mean? I cried. I would hardly have credited it, said Poirot thoughtfully. But women are very unexpected. Here are Jack and Marthe Dubriol, I exclaimed, looking out of the window. Poirot bounded out of the room and met the young couple on the steps outside. Do not enter. It is better not. Your mother is very upset. I know, said Jack Reynolds. I must go up to her at once. But no, I tell you, it is better not. But Marthe and I, in any case, do not take Mademoiselle with you. Mount, if you must, but you would be wise to be guided by me. A voice on the stair behind made us all start. I thank you for your good offices, Monsieur Poirot, but I will make my own wishes clear. We stared in astonishment, descending the stairs. Leaning on Leonie's arm was Mrs. Reynolds, her head still bandaged. The French girl was weeping and imploring her mistress to return to bed. Madame will kill herself. It is contrary to all the doctor's orders. But Mrs. Reynolds came on. Mother, cried Jack, starting forward, but with a gesture she drove him back. I am no mother of yours. You are no son of mine. From this day and hour I renounce you. Mother, cried the lad, stupefied. For a moment she seemed to waver, to falter before the anguish in his voice. Poirot made a mediating gesture, but instantly she regained command of herself. Your father's blood on your head. You are morally guilty of his death. You thwarted and defied him over this girl, and by your heartless treatment of another girl, you brought out his death. Go out from my house. Tomorrow I intend to take such a step as shall make it certain that you shall never touch a penny of his money. Make your way in the world as best you can with the help of the girl who is the daughter of your father's bitterest enemy. And slowly, painfully, she retraced her way upstairs. We were all dumbfounded, totally unprepared for such a demonstration. Jack Reynolds, worn out with all he had already gone through, swayed and nearly fell. Poirot and I went quickly to his assistance. "He is overdone," muttered Poirot to Marthe. "Where can we take him?" "But home, to the Villa Margheriti. We will nurse him, my mother and I. My poor Jack." We got the lad to the villa, where he dropped limply onto a chair in a semi-dazed condition. Poirot felt his head and hands. "He has fever," the long strain began to tell, "and now this shock on top of it. Get him to bed, and Hastings and I will summon a doctor." A doctor was soon procured. After examining the patient, he gave it as his opinion that it was simply a case of nerve strain. With perfect rest and quiet, the lad might be almost restored by the next day. But if excited, there was a chance of brain fever. It would be advisable for someone to sit up all night with him. Finally, having done all we could, we left him in the charge of Marthe and her mother and set out for the town. It was past our usual hour of dining, and we were both famished. The first restaurant we came to assuaged the pangs of hunger with an excellent omelette and an equally excellent entrecôte to follow. "And now for quarters for the night," said Poirot, when at length Cafe Nere had completed the meal. "Shall we try our old friend, the Hotel de Bains?" We traced our step there without more ado. Yes, Monsieur could be accommodated with 2 good rooms overlooking the sea. Then Poirot asked a question which surprised me. "Has an English lady, Miss Robinson, arrived?" "Yes, Monsieur. She is in the little salon." "Ah, Poirot," I cried, keeping pace with him as he walked along the corridor. "Who on earth is Miss Robinson?" Poirot beamed kindly on me. "It is that I have arranged you a marriage, Hastings." "But I say, ah," both Poirot giving me a friendly push over the threshold of the door. "Do you think I wish to trumpet aloud in Merlinville the name of Duvian?" It was indeed Cinderella who rose to greet us. I took her hand in both of mine. My eyes said the rest. Poirot cleared his throat. "Miss Enfants," he said, "for the moment we have no time for sentiment. There is work ahead of us. Mademoiselle, were you able to do what I asked you?" In response, Cinderella took from her bag an object wrapped up in paper and handed it silently to Poirot. The latter unwrapped it. I gave a start, for it was the aeroplane dagger which I understood she had cast into the sea. Strange how reluctant women always are to destroy the most compromising of object and documents. "Thus bien, mon enfant," said Poirot. "I am pleased with you. Go now and rest yourself. Hastings here and I have work to do. You shall see him tomorrow." "Where are you going?" asked the girl, her eyes widening. "You shall hear all about it tomorrow, because wherever you are going, I am coming too. But, mademoiselle, I am coming too, I tell you." Poirot realized that it was futile to argue. He gave in. "Come then, mademoiselle, but it will not be assuming. In all probability nothing will happen." The girl made no reply. 20 minutes later, we set forth. It was quite dark now, a close, oppressive evening. Poirot led the way out of the town in the direction of the Villa Genevieve. But when he reached the Villa Margheriti, he paused. I should like to assure myself that all goes well with Jack Renauld. Come with me, Hastings. Mademoiselle will perhaps remain outside. Madame Dobrioul might say something which would wound her. We unlatched the gate and walked up the path. As we went round to the side of the house, I drew Poirot's attention to a window on the first floor. Thrown sharply on the blind was the profile of Marthe Dobrioul. Said Poirot, I figure it myself that is the room where we shall find Jack Renauld. Madame Dobrioul opened the door to us. She explained that Jack was much the same, but perhaps we would like to see for ourselves. She led us upstairs and into the bedroom. Marthe Dobrioul was sitting by a table with a lamp on it, working. She put her finger to her lips as we entered. Jack Renauld was sleeping an uneasy, fitful sleep, his head turning from side to side and his face still unduly flushed. Is the doctor coming again? Asked Poirot in a whisper. Not unless we send. He is sleeping. That is the great thing. Maman made him a peasant. She sat down again with her embroidery as we left the room. Madame Dobrioul accompanied us down the stairs. Since I had learned for her past history, I viewed this woman with increased interest. She stood there with her eyes cast down, the same very faint, enigmatical smile that I remembered on her lips, and suddenly I felt afraid of her, as one might feel afraid of a beautiful poisonous snake. I hope we have not derailed you, Madame, said Poirot politely as she opened the door for us to pass out. Not at all, monsieur. By the way, said Poirot as though struck by an afterthought, Monsieur Stoner has not been in Merlinville today, as I could not at all fathom the point of this question, which I well know to be meaningless as far as Poirot was concerned. Madame Dobrioul replied quite composedly, not that I know of. He has not had an interview with Madame Renauld. How should I know that, monsieur? True, said Poirot. I thought you might have seen him coming or going. That is all. Good night, madam. Why, I began. Now why, Hastings? There will be time for that later. We rejoined Cinderella and made our way rapidly in the direction of the Villa Geneve. Poirot looked over his shoulder once at the lighted window and the profile of Marthe as she bent over her work. He is being guarded at all events, he muttered. Arrived at the Villa Geneve, Poirot took up his stand behind some bushes to the left of the drive, where while enjoying a good view ourselves, we were completely hidden from sight. The villa itself was in total darkness. Everybody was without doubt in bed and asleep. We were almost immediately under the window of Mrs. Reynolds' bedroom, which window I noticed was open. It seemed to me that it was upon this spot that Poirot's eyes were fixed. What are we going to do? I whispered. Watch, but I do not expect anything to happen for at least an hour, probably 2 hours. But his words were interrupted by a long, thin, drawn cry. Help! A light flashed upon the first floor room on the right-hand side of the front door. The cry came from there, and even as we watched there came a shadow on the blind as of 2 people struggling. Millie Tonnerus, cried Poirot. She must have changed her room. Dashing forward, he battered wildly on the front door. Then, rushing to the tree in the flower bed, he swarmed up it with the agility of a cat. I followed him. As with a bound he sprang in through the open window. Looking over my shoulder, I saw Dulcie, reaching the branch behind me. Take care, I exclaimed. Take care of your grandmother, retorted the girl. This is child's play to me. Poirot had rushed through the empty room and was pounding on the door. Locked and bolted on the outside, he growled, and it will take time to burst it open. The cries for help were getting noticeably fainter. I saw despair in Poirot's eyes. He and I together put our shoulders to the door. Cinderella's voice, calm and dispassionate, came from the window. You will be too late. I guess I am the only one who can do anything. Before I could move a hand to stop her, she appeared to leap from the window into space. I rushed and looked out. To my horror, I saw her hanging by her hands from the roof, propelling herself along by jerks in the direction of the lighted window. Good heaven, she will be killed, I cried. You forget, she is a professional acrobat, Hastings. It was the province of the good God that made her insist on coming with us tonight. I only pray that she may be in time. A cry of absolute terror floated out on the night as the girl disappeared through the window, and then in Cinderella's clear tone came the words, No, you don't. I have got you, and my wrists are just like steel. At the same moment, the door of our prison was opened cautiously by Francois. Poirot brushed her aside unceremoniously and rushed down the passage to where the other maids were grouped round the further door. It is locked on the inside, monsieur. There was the sound of a heavy fall within. After a moment or two, the key turned and the door swung slowly open. Cinderella, very pale, beckoned us in. She is safe, demanded Poirot. Yes, I was just in time. She was exhausted. Mrs. Reynolds was half sitting, half lying on the bed. She was gasping for breath. Nearly strangled me, she murmured painfully. The girl picked up something from the floor and handed it to Poirot. It was a rolled up ladder of silk rope, very fine with quite strong. A gateway, said Poirot, by the window, while we were battering at the door. Where is the other? The girl stood aside a little and pointed. On the ground lay a figure wrapped in some dark material, a fold of which hid the face. Dead? She nodded. I think so. Head must have struck the marble fender. But who is it? I cried. The murderer of Reynolds, Hastings, and the would-be murderer of Madame Reynolds. Puzzled and uncomprehending, I knelt down and, lifting the fold of cloth, looked into the dead, beautiful face of Madame Dubriol. Chapter 28. Journey's End. I have confused memories of the further event of that night. Poirot seemed deaf to my repeated questions. He was engaged in overwhelming Francois with reproaches for not having told him of Mrs. Reynolds' change of sleeping quarters. I caught him by the shoulder, determined to attract his attention and make myself heard. But you must have known, I expostulated. You were taken up to see her this afternoon. Poirot designed to attend to me for a brief moment. She had been wheeled on a sofa into the middle room. Her bound over, he explained. But monsieur, cried Francois, Madame changed her room almost immediately after the crimes. The association, they were too distressing. Then why was I not told? Vociferated Poirot, striking the table and working himself into the first-class passion. I demand of you, why was I not told? You are an old woman, completely imbecile, and Leonie and Dennis are no better. All of you are triple idiots. Your stupidity has nearly caused the death of your mistress. But for this courageous child, he broke off and, darting across the room to where the girl was bending over ministering to Mrs. Reynolds, he embraced her with Gallic fervor, slightly to my annoyance. I was aroused from my condition of mental fog by a sharp command from Poirot to fetch the doctor immediately on Mrs. Reynolds' behalf. After that I might summon the police, and he added, to complete my dudgeon. It will hardly be worth your while to return here. I shall be too busy to attend to you. And of Mademoiselle, here I make a grade malade. I retired with that dignity I could command. Having done my errands, I returned to the hotel. I understood next to nothing of what had occurred. The events of the night seemed fantastic and impossible. Nobody would answer my question. Nobody had seemed to hear them. Angrily, I flung myself into bed and slept the sleep of the bewildered and utterly exhausted. I awoke to find the sun pouring in through the open windows and Poirot, neat and smiling, sitting beside the bed. Enfin, you wake, but it is that you are a famous sleeper. Hastings, do you know that it is nearly 11 o'clock? I groaned and put a hand to my head. I must have been dreaming, I said. Do you know, I actually dreamt that we found Marthe Dubreuil's body in Mrs. Reynolds' room, and that you declared her to have murdered Mr. Reynolds. You were not dreaming. All that is quite true. But Bella Duvian killed Mr. Reynolds? Oh no, Hastings, she is not. She said she did, yes, but that was to save the man she loved from the guillotine. What? Remember Jack Reynolds' story. They both arrived on the scene on the same instant, and each took the other to be the perpetrator of the crime. The girl stares at him in horror and then with a cry rushed away. But when she hears that the crime has been brought home to him, she cannot bear it and comes forward to accuse herself and save him from certain death. Poirot leaned back in his chair and brought the tip of his finger together in familiar style. The case was not quite satisfactory to me, he observed judiciously. All along I was strongly under the impression that we were dealing with a cold-blooded and premeditated crime committed by someone who had contented themselves very clearly with using Monsieur Reynolds' own plans for throwing the police off the track. The great criminal, as you may remember my remarking to you once, is always supremely simple. I nodded. Now, to support this theory, the criminal must have been fully cognizant of Monsieur Reynolds' plan that led us to Mrs. Reynolds, but fact failed to support any theory of her guilt. Is there anyone else who might have known of them? Yes, from Marthe Dubreuil's own lips, we were the admission that she overheard Mr. Reynolds' quarrel with the tramp. If she could overhear that, there is no reason why she should not have heard everything else, especially if Mr. and Madame Reynolds were imprudent enough to discuss their plans sitting on the bench. Remember how easily you overheard Marthe's conversation with Jack Reynolds from that spot. But what possible motive could Marthe have for murdering Mr. Reynolds? I argued. That what motive? Money. Reynolds was a millionaire several times over, and at his death, or so she and Jack believed, half that vast fortune would pass to his son. Let us reconstruct the scene from the standpoint of Marthe Dubriol. Marthe Dubriol overhears what passes between Ranald and his wife. So far he has been a nice little source of income to the Dubriol mother and daughter, but now he proposed to escape from their toils. At first, possibly her idea is to prevent that escape, but a bolder idea takes its place, and one that fails to horrify the daughter of Jenny Baroldi. At present, Ranald stands inexorable in the way of her marriage with Jack. If the latter defies his father, he will be a pauper, which is not at all the mind of Mademoiselle Marthe. In fact, I doubt if she has ever carried a straw for Jack Ranald. She can simulate emotion, but in reality she is of the same cold, calculating type as her mother. I doubt too whether she was really very sure of her hold over the boy's affections. She had dazzled and captivated him, but separated from her, as his father could so easily manage to separate him. She might lose him, but with Ranald dead and Jack the heir to half his millions, the marriage can take place or at once, and at a stroke she will attain wealth, not the beggarly thousands that have been extracted from him so far, and her clever brain taking the simplicity of the thing. It is all so easy. Ranald is planning all the circumstances of his death. She has only to step in at the right moment and turn the farce into grim reality. And here comes in the second point, which led me infallibly to Marthe Dubriol, the dagger. Jack Ranald had 3 souvenirs made. One he gave to his mother, one to Bella Duvian. Was it not highly probable that he had given the third one to Marthe Dubriol? So then, to sum up, there were 4 points of note again. Marthe Dubriol. Marthe Dubriol could have overheard Ranald's plans. Marthe Dubriol had a direct interest in causing Ranald's death. Marthe Dubriol was the daughter of the notorious Madame Baroldi, who is, in my opinion, was morally and virtually the murderess of her husband, although it may have been George's Cornus hand which struck the actual blow. Marthe Dubriol was the only person besides Jack Ranald likely to leave the third dagger in her possession. Poirot paused and cleared his throat. Of course, when I learned the existence of other girl, Bella Duvian, I realized that it was quite possible that she might have killed Ranald. The solution did not command itself to me because, as I pointed out to you, Hastings, an expert such as I am, like to meet a foeman worthy of his steel. Still, one must take crimes as one finds them, not as one would like them to be. It did not seem very likely that Bella Duvian would be wandering about carrying a souvenir paper knife in her hand, but of course she might have had some idea all the time of revenging herself on Jack Ranald. When she actually came forward and confessed to the murder, it seemed that all was over, and yet I was not satisfied, mon ami. I was not satisfied. I went over the case again minutely, and I came to the same conclusion as before. If it was not Bella Duvian, the only other person who could have committed the crime was Marthe Dubriol, but I had not one single proof against her. And then you showed me that letter from Mademoiselle Dulcie, and I saw a chance of settling the matter once for all. The original dagger was stolen by Dulcie Duvian and thrown into sea, since as she thought it belonged to her sister. But if by any chance it was not her sister's, but the one given by Jack and Marthe Dubriol, why then Bella Duvian's dagger would be still intact. I said no word to you, Hastings. It was no time for romance. But I sought out Mademoiselle Dulcie, told her as much as I deemed needful, and set her to search among the effects of her sister. Imagine my elation when she sought me out according to my instructions as Miss Robinson, with the precious souvenir in her possession. In the meantime, I had taken steps to force Mademoiselle Marthe into the open by my orders. Madame Renaud repulsed her son and declared her intention of making a will on the marrow which should cut him off from ever enjoying even a portion of his father's fortune. It was a desperate step, but a necessary one, and Madame Renaud was fully prepared to take the risk, though unfortunately she also never thought of mentioning her change of room. I suppose she took it for granted that I know all happened as I thought. Marthe Dubriol made a last bold bid for the Renaud millions and failed. What absolutely bewildered me, I said, is how she ever got into the house without our seeing her. It seems an absolute miracle. We left her behind at the Villa Margherite. We go straight to the village anyway, and yet she is where before us. But we did not leave her behind. She was out of the Villa Margherite by the back way while we were talking to her mother in the hall. That is where, as the Americans say, she put it over on Hercule Poirot. But the shadow on the blind, we saw it from the road and beyond. When we looked up, Madame Dubriol had just had time to run upstairs and take her place. Madame Dubriol, yes, one is old and one is young, one dark and one fair, but for the purpose of a silhouette on a blind, their profiles are singularly alike. Even I did not suspect, triple imbecile that I was. I thought I had plenty of time before me, that she would not try to gain admission to the villa until much later. She had brains, that beautiful Mademoiselle Marthe, and her object was to murder Mrs. Renaud. Yes, the whole fortune would then pass to her son, but it would have been suicide, mon ami. On the floor by Marthe Dubriol's body, I found a pad and a little bottle of chloroform and a hypodermic syringe containing a fatal dose of morphine. You understand? The chloroform first, then when the victim is unconscious, the prick of the needle. By the morning, the smell of the chloroform was quite disappeared, and the syringe lies where it has fallen from Madame Renaud's hand. What would he say? The excellent Monsieur Hotet? Poor woman, what did I tell you? The shock of joy. It was too much on top of the rest. Did I not say that I should not be surprised if her brain became unhinged? Altogether a most tragic case, the Renaud case. However, Hastings, things did not go quite as Mademoiselle Marthe had planned. To begin with, Madame Renaud was awake and waiting for her. There is a struggle, but Madame Renaud is terribly weak still. There is a last chance for Marthe Dubriol. The idea of suicide is at an end, but if she can silence Madame Renaud with her strong hands, made a gateway with her little silk ladder, while we are still battering on the inside of the further door, and be back at the Villa Margherite before we return there. It will be hard to prove anything against her, but she was checkmated, not by Hercule Poirot, but by La Papete acrobat with her wrist of steel, mused over the whole story. When did you first begin to suspect Marthe Dubriol? Poirot. When she told us she had overheard the quarrel in the garden. Poirot smiled. My friend, do you remember when we drove into Merlinville that first day? At the beautiful girl we saw standing at the gate. You asked me if I had noticed a young goddess, and I replied to you that I had seen only a girl with anxious eyes. That is how I have thought of Marthe Dubriol from the beginning, the girl with the anxious eyes. Why was she anxious? Not on Jack Reynolds' behalf, for she did not know then that he had been in Merlinville the previous evening. By the way, I exclaimed, how is Jack Reynolds? Much better. He is still at Villa Margheriti, but Madame Dubriol has disappeared. The police are looking for her. Was she in with her daughter? Do you think? We shall never know. Madame is a lady who can keep her secrets, and I doubt very much if the police will ever find her. Has Jack Reynolds been told? Not yet. It will be terrible shock to him, naturally, and yet. Do you know, Hastings, I doubt if his heart was ever seriously engaged. So far we have looked upon Bella Duvian as a siren, the Marthe Dubriol as the girl he really loved, but I think that if we reserved the terms, we should come nearer to the truth. Marthe Dubriol was very beautiful. She set herself to fascinate Jack, and she succeeded. But remember his curious reluctance to break with the other girl, and how he was willing to go to the guillotine rather than implicate her. I have a little idea that when he learns the truth, he will be horrified, revolted, and his false love will wither away. What about Gerard? He has a crisis of the nerves, that one. He has been obliged to return to Paris. We both smiled. Poirot proved a fairly true prophet. When at length the doctor pronounced Jack Reynolds strong enough to hear the truth, it was Poirot who broke it to him. The shock was indeed terrifying. Yet Jack rallied better than I could have supposed possible. His mother's devotion helped him to live through those difficult days. The mother and son were inseparable now. There was a further revelation to come. Poirot had acquainted Mrs. Reynolds with the fact that he knew her secret, and had represented to her that Jack should not be left in ignorance of his father's past. To hide the truth never does it avail. Madame, be brave and tell him everything. With a heavy heart, Mrs. Reynolds consented, and her son learned that the father had been in actual fact a fugitive from justice. A halting question was promptly answered by Poirot. Reassure yourself, Monsieur Jack. The world knows nothing. As far as I can see, there is no obligation for me to take the police into my confidence. Throughout the case, I have acted not for them, but for your father. Justice overtook him at last, but no one need ever know that he and Georges Cornu were one and the same. There were, of course, various points in the case that remained puzzling to the police, but Poirot explained things in so plausible a fashion that all query about them was gradually stilled. Shortly after we got back into London, I noticed a magnificent model of a fax hound adorning Poirot's mantelpiece. In answer to my enquiring glance, Poirot nodded. Mais oui, I got my 500 francs. Is he not a splendid fellow? I call him Gerard. A few days later, Jack Renauld come to see us with a resolute expression on his face. Monsieur Pirate, I have come to say goodbye. I am sailing for South America almost immediately. My father had large interests over the continent and I mean to start a new life out there. You go alone, Monsieur Jack. My mother come with me, and I shall keep Stoner on as my secretary. He likes out of the way part of the world. No one else goes with you, Jack flushed. You mean a girl who loves you very dearly, who has been willing to lay down her life for you? How could I ask her? Muttered the boy. After all that has happened, could I go to her and, oh, what sort of a lame story could I tell? Less famous. They have a wonderful genius for manufacturing crutches for stories like that. Yes, but I have been such a damned fool. So have all of us. One time and another, observed a pirate philosophically. But Jack's face had hardened. There is something else. I am my father's son. Would anyone marry me, knowing that you are your father's son? You say, Hastings here will tell you that I believe in heredity. Well then, wait. I know a woman of courage and endurance, capable of great love, of supreme self-sacrifice. The boy looked up. His eyes softened. My mother? Yes, you are your mother's son, as well as your father's. Then go to Mademoiselle Bella. Tell her everything. Keep nothing back and see what she will say. Jack looked irresolute. Go to her as a boy no longer, but a man. A man bored by the faith of the past and the faith of today, but looking forward to a new and wonderful life. Ask her to share it with you. You may not realize it, but your love for each other has been tested in the fire and not found wanting. You have both been willing to lay down your lives for each other. And what of Captain Arthur Hastings, humble chronicler of the page? There is some talk of his joining the Renault on a ranch across the seas, but for the end of the story, I prefer to go back to a morning in the garden of the Villa Geneve. I can't call you Bella, I said, since it isn't your name, and Dulcie seems so unfamiliar, so it is got to be Cinderella. Cinderella married the prince. You remember, I am not a prince, but she interrupted me. Cinderella wants him, I am sure. You see, she couldn't promise to turn into a princess. She was only a little scullion after all. It is the prince's turn to interrupt. I interpolated. Do you know what he said? No. Hell, said the prince, and kissed her, and I suited the action to the word.